Each of us woke up this morning in our beds, probably to the sound of alarms on our smartphones. Then we got dressed, grabbed our laptops, and headed off to school or work. But approximately 58,000 college students nationwide didn't have mornings like ours. According to the free application for federal student aid, these 58,000 woke up in a shelter or a friend's home or even on the streets. They traveled to campus using public transportation or their own 2 feet. They can't afford the latest smartphones and tablets, and they most likely didn't wake up in a warm, comfortable bed. These 58,000 college students are homeless, and like so many other Americans, they need our help. The problem of homelessness is an important one in our society, and we must address it today. We will begin by reviewing the need for change, talking through the very best solution, and discussing the practicality of our approach. So, the need for change is demonstrated by the history and status quo of this issue. Let's evaluate the problem of homelessness in the history of the U.S. The American homelessness epidemic began in the Industrial Revolution and was worsened then in the 1930s by the Great Depression. Experts estimate that during this time, over 2 million people were living on the streets in our country. The situation improved after the Great Depression, but then legislation in the 1960s and 1980s exacerbated the problem again. Most recently, the recession in 2008 increased rates of homelessness. Fast forward to 2015, when a report titled "The State of Homelessness in America" found that there are about 565,000 people living on the streets in the U.S. Another 7 million occupy a home with friends or another family. This is an especially relevant topic right here in our city of Nashville, where Joey Garrison of the Tennessean reports that homelessness rose 9.8% between 2015 and 2016. On top of that, the most recent information from Nashville's Metro Development and Housing Agency suggests that about 2,400 people are living on the streets right now in Nashville. These facts demonstrate that there is an obvious need for change. Thus, we must work to improve the status quo. What changes are we to make, though? Well, here's the plan that I'd like to propose. There are 3 steps that we must take in order to combat homelessness in the U.S. Providing access to health care, education and job training, and affordable housing. Today, I'm going to specifically address how we can battle homelessness in Nashville, which can then be applied to cities nationwide. So let's begin by looking at access to health care. The United States Interagency Council on Homelessness argues that the ability to receive health care makes the biggest difference for people in need. That's because homelessness and health care are directly related. In fact, a lack of insurance can even be a cause. Most individuals who can't afford health insurance can't afford to pay for those services independently either. And too many people are forced to choose between paying their rent and paying their hospital bills when disease or illness hits. Half of all personal bankruptcies in the U.S. are caused by health problems, according to the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council. Healthcare is even more of a problem for people who are already living on the streets. People who aren't housed are 3 to 6 times more likely to become ill than those who have current housing. This demonstrates that the first step to getting homeless people back on their feet must be providing accessible healthcare programs. Then, to get people back into homes, the second step that we can take is implementing education and job training. Homelessness Hub, an organization committed to researching solutions to homelessness, found that inadequate income, employment, and education are the most common causes of long-term homelessness. However, they also provide possibilities for people to move from shelters into steady housing. Developing education, training, and employment programs for people experiencing homelessness is more difficult than for housed people because of factors such as a lack of a permanent address, inability to maintain the appropriate hygiene, common mental health and addiction problems, and trouble following shelter rules while employed. There's also a high need for very simple skills-based training like money management, job readiness, and cooking. Because the education levels of people who are homeless are lower on average than the general population, they're going to have trouble navigating the formal labor market. Therefore, the programs that we create must recognize and accommodate these challenges. That brings me to the third and final step of our solution, creating access to affordable housing. What's the point in funding shelters if they're only a temporary fix for those that they house? According to Samuel Lester of the Tennessean, the MDHA received 15,127 applications for housing voucher support in August of 2015. As of March of 2016, 14,491 of those were still waiting for slowly occurring vacancies. According to the Journal of Urban Affairs, for every $100 that rent rises in a city, homelessness increases by about 15%. Since the beginning of 2013, the average one-bedroom rent in Nashville has risen by $220. This would predict a 33% increase in homelessness in Nashville. And that is exactly what's happened. This is where something called the Barnes Fund for Affordable Housing becomes very important. The fund, according to Nashville Mayor Megan Barry's website, is the city's account committed to creating affordable housing for those living in poverty. This distribution of money within the Barnes Fund becomes less efficient, though, with each bureaucratic agency that dictates its actions along the way. Thus, I contend now that the fund should be able to operate outside of the MDHA's control. This will allow it to help more people more quickly. On top of this change, Nashville and other cities nationwide can implement a new zoning rule that prevents companies from destroying affordable housing without replacing it. So finally, let's discuss the practicality of this solution. The funding of such an ambitious plan is the first concern that many critics raise, so let's talk finances. The money for these projects needs to come from state and local governments, and the funds needed to finance these projects actually already exist within our local governments. They just need to be redistributed. There's an existing program here in Tennessee called PATH, which stands for Programs for Assistance in Transition from Homelessness. PATH specifically helps homeless people who are experiencing mental illness to find health care and job training. So we don't need to implement a whole new program. We simply need to expand the existing program to other demographics of homeless Tennesseans. This is far more financially feasible than starting up a whole new initiative. Furthermore, Lester's Tennessean article points out that Knoxville, a city less than a third of the size of Nashville, devotes $10 million annually to its housing fund. Here in Nashville, we're dedicating just a third of that amount to the Barnes Fund annually. Knoxville's approach demonstrates that our proposal is feasible. However, a reallocation of funds would require political cooperation. The motivation and cooperation of government officials is the second potential problem with this plan, and it is absolutely crucial to its success. But specifically within Nashville, new Mayor Megan Barry has declared that she'll push for more job training and assisting the homeless in areas of affordable housing here in Nashville. Additionally, the 2015 U.S. Conference of Mayors incorporated increased focus on this important issue, which suggested that the many mayors in attendance are seeking to revamp their local approaches to homelessness. This bodes well for our solution. So, in the last several minutes, we've explored the need for change, examined the best solution, and talked about the practicality of our approach. We've seen that there are very clear steps our government can take to combat the problem of homelessness. The question still remains, though. What do you or I do to impact meaningful change? Well, the answer is twofold. Volunteer and advocate. So the current system of homeless shelters isn't the most efficient solution to the problem of homelessness, but we can still do good within its confines for the time being. So take a few hours every month and volunteer at a homeless shelter right here in Nashville. More importantly, however, we must bring attention to this issue. By bringing this up with our friends, family, and local lawmakers, we can set the ball rolling towards real change. And if that's not motivation enough, just think of the tens of thousands of homeless college students whose mornings aren't filled with the same luxuries as ours. Thank you.